wanted to create a demo for you guys going over the exercise we did in class last week to ensure that you guys can do it for your homework. There was a lot of small buttons and settings that we pressed, and I just wanted to do it again so you guys had something that you could scrub through like a video, and let's get started. So right before we start the project, I just want to go over the steps to succeed in this homework this week. So here are the steps, and what we're doing is we're trying to create a castle and put it on top of an image. Now, I have found my image, which is the one we used last week, and here it is. It's a nice landscape image here, and I just want to put a castle right here. This is a nice landscape, so we're just trying to basically superimpose a castle on this image. But the problem is we don't have the proper perspective in our drawings all the time. So we're going to use Maya's 3D tools to give us some perspective. So here are the steps. First things first, we need to find a landscape picture, and we've done that with that image that we just saw. The second thing we want to do is we want to gather some reference images of castles that we like. Now I grabbed some from the internet, and I like this one because it's nice and easy to model. You can grab references from anywhere, it doesn't matter, it's not like you're going to be selling them. And I encourage you to look up castle images of multiple castles, maybe either ones that exist in real life or ones that don't exist, maybe some fantasy ones too. It's okay, whatever your castle design wants to be. After we found those, we're going to model our castle. And once it's all modeled and nicely put together, we're going to bring our landscape image into Maya using an image plane. That's the key word there, an image plane. And after we get our image plane in there, we'll line up our castle in perspective, and we'll disable that image plane and render out a PNG of our castle. And then we should be able to put that image right on top of our landscape in Photoshop, and we'll be able to paint on top of it to make our matte painting. Alright, so let's get started. Okay, so I'm in Maya 2018, and the very first thing you want to do is, of course, to set your project. So let's go to File and Set Project. And I've already created a project in my Drexel folder here. And here it is, and I'm going to set it. And it's going to say, hey, there's no workspace here. So we'll say, create default workspace, no problem. No problem. I like to work with the gradient background, so I'm going to hit Alt and B until I get there. That looks pretty good. And let's take a look at some of my reference images here. So I'm definitely going to start out with a cube, like we did in class. And I've got an image of the top here somewhere. There it is. And we'll be able to look at that. And then we're going to create some towers and move on from there. So I'm mainly going to be using the extrude tool and the insert polygon or insert edge loop tool. And we want to make sure that we're inside our modeling tab here. And before I actually begin, let's make sure and save our scene, which is going to be inside of our castle project. I'll make a new folder called scenes, and inside of that I'll save my castle _ version 01 and hit save as. Alright, so let's start with a cube. Oh, you know what? Before that, I'll change my Maya units from centimeters to inches because I want to go over that again. So that's under Windows, Settings and Preferences, Preferences. And we're going to go to Settings here. And in Settings, we're going to look for our working units, which is set to centimeter, and we will select inch and hit Save. Notice my grid got a little bit bigger. Alright, so let's make this cube. Alright, there's my cube. And we're going to name it Castle Base because it's going to be the main part of our castle. And in my Attributes editor, which is located on the right side of my screen here, I want to be inside the Polycube 1 tab. And this is where I'm going to be able to kind of type in some numbers for the height, width, and depth, and also affect my original subdivision depth as well. Alright, so let's say, I think what we did in class was something like 150 in the height for inches. And we're just doing some general stuff. It's pretty big. I like it. And we'll do 50 and 50. That looks a little tall. A little tall. I'm just tumbling around with my Alt and left mouse button, of course. We'll do 75. There we go. And I'm just using the tab key to go in between these. Alright, that looks pretty good. Pretty good indeed. Now, I'm just going to save. I always like to save. Always good to save. Subdivision, we're going to do 10 to start off with, just to see how that looks. That looks pretty good. 10, 10, and 10. And I'm just looking for something that's going to give me all of the things that I'm going to want. And I just want some squares here, or faces, that are going to make it look nice and castle-y. All right. So let's do that top part. I'm going to go into face mode. And I'm just going to select around this ring, because we need to make that sort of lip around the beginning here. Around the top, excuse me. I'm just holding down the shift key. Now I'm going to orbit around my scene here, make sure I don't have anything else selected. Looks like I'm pretty good. Let's hit F to focus on that, and then let's extrude. And to extrude, we can either go to Edit Mesh, Extrude. There's also a button located right over here, or we can hit Control E. I'll use this button here. And we'll extrude this upwards. And I'll use the blue arrow to just kind of extrude something. That looks pretty good. Alright, I'm done with that. Alright, then let's grab our corner here. And I'm going to grab all 4 corners. And let's see, I think I'm also going to, we'll do the center of each. Oops, maybe not. That looks pretty good. We'll do the center too. That looks good. Make sure we don't have anything else selected. We don't. I'll hit F. And let's extrude again. This time I'll use the button at the shelf here. And again, I'll use that blue arrow to bring it up. Pretty good. Alright, that looks nice and castle-y, I think. And for this assignment, I'm really not looking for anything crazy, but I'm encouraging you guys to use as much time as you want to make a stellar castle. Let's see. I'm going to make a door here for my castle. And I think I'm going to use this hole right here. I'm going to grab this vertex and move it up a little bit. And I'm also going to grab my faces here. And I might scale this out just using the R key to bring up my scale tool. Not looking for anything crazy. I'm just going to delete that. Let's make a little hole. Alright. Excellent. Very castle-y. And for the sake of this demo, I'm not going to model too much more of this castle other than the towers. Alright, let's do that. Let's make a tower. Let's save first. File, save. And let's make a cube. This one is going to be my tower underscore base 1 because it's the first base. And let's move it out. I'm just hitting the W key to move it out. There we go. And let's see the width. Let's make it like 25 in the depth, and height. Let's make it 50. Ooh, sorry. Did I say 50? I'm at 250. That's nice and big. Maybe 200. All right, even better. I'll just move this next to it here. Nice. And what I'm going to do is I'll just add some subdivisions on the height here because I'm looking for this ring. And with that, I can either add an edge loop right over here, or I can double click on this loop here, and I can move it up if that's what I want to do. And that's what I'll do here. If I did want to add an edge loop, I would go to Mesh Tools, Insert Edge Loop Tool right here, and I would click and drag on here. Alright, back to my selection tool with the Q key, go to face mode, and I'm going to hold shift and double click on the face next to that one so I can select this entire ring. That's just a quick way to do it. Again, to do that, you just select the face and hold down shift and double click the face directly to the left or right above it or right below it or to the right of it, basically right next to it. Hold down shift and double click, and we should have that entire ring selected, and we do. Excellent. Alright, so back to my reference. I always want to be checking this reference. Let's take a look at these towers here. These are pretty square lips, so I'm going to make sure to keep those nice and square. Alright, and we're going to extrude this, so let's hit the extrude button. And again, I'm going to use this blue arrow out here. That looks pretty good, nice and square. You can finagle the kind of the squareness of our extrude using one of these scale cubes, but because I only have 4 faces here, it's bound to be nice and square. Make my lip a little bit extra nice, and we can even bevel it if we want by grabbing this green scale square, this Y, and kind of pushing this down. There we go. That looks kind of cool. And I'll even move this up. I just hit the W key there to bring up my move tool. So now I'm outside of my extrude tool. And I'm just going to push this up just so we get kind of this like nice diagonal line here. We're going to try to straighten this as much as possible. That's good enough for me. Back to my object mode. That looks pretty good. Let's create the cones over here. I know I've got 5 of them. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, and then a big one. So let's use the cone primitive. We'll call this cone tower cone 1. Put an underscore right here. It's always good to keep your naming conventions the same. And let's move this out over here for a second. And inside my attribute editor, I'm going to make this radius nice and big. Maybe like 10 or 15. And we'll make the height something like 20 or maybe even 40. Just something nice and big. I'm going to turn my wireframe mode on so I can easily line this up. To get your wireframe mode, you can go to this button right here. Alright, let's move this over, moving it up. That looks pretty good. I'm not too dissatisfied with that. That looks pretty good. But I think I'm going to lower this radius just a bit because I do want to be able to fit 4 other cones on here. Alright, sweet. So I don't want to have to go through the trouble of creating another cone and then adjusting the scale and things like that, or the height and radius. So I'm just going to duplicate this and use my scale tool to get this to look right. So I'll select my object here in object mode, my cone, and I'll hit Control D to duplicate it. I've already made one right here. And I can use my move tool using the W key, the move tool located here. I'm going to move it over. And I'll hit R to bring up my scale tool and grab this middle arrow here to scale it down. And we'll move it. That looks alright. Might even scale it up a little bit. And again, we're just kind of finagling it, just putting it right in place. Kind of getting a little zen. That looks okay. We'll select this one and hit Control D again to duplicate it, and we'll move it over here. That looks pretty good. Pretty good. And we'll select both of these cones here, selecting one and then holding Shift to select it, and hitting Control D again. And select our move tool, and we're going to move this. Alright, this is a pretty decent looking tower here, if I do say so myself. Now, I want to be able to move this as a whole unit. Right now, they're all just individual objects. So what I want to do is I want to create a group of these tower objects, because I want to be able to duplicate that for the other 4 parts of my tower, or for the other 4 towers. So what I'm going to do is I'll select the first tower base here and hold down Shift and select all the aspects of my tower. I can also just drag select that if I wanted to, but that's going to work out for us. Alright, so with that selected, making sure you have nothing else selected. The only other thing is this tower base, so I know I don't have anything else selected. I'm going to go to Edit, Group, or Control G. We'll hit Edit Group. So now we've made a group, and I'll double click on this group to name it our Tower Group 1. Very nice. And this tower group looks like it has its pivot point in the center of my scene, and I want it to be in the center of my tower. So to center up this pivot point, I'll go to Modify, center pivot. Okay, now I'll be able to just kind of move my tower up here, and I'm just gonna line it up kind of by eye. Nice. That looks pretty good. Pretty good. Maybe I'll even do this. That looks decent. Add a little bit of depth. And when we create a group, you notice that we have a little plus sign, and that tells us there are objects inside of it, or there are nodes inside of this group. And that's good. Now I can still select these and move them and rotate them and things, but if I select the group, it moves as a whole. That's very important for your later Maya careers. But for now, we'll just select the group and keep it nice and tidy. So with our tower group 1 selected, I'm going to hit Control D to duplicate it, to make a second one, and we'll move this one right over here. That looks pretty good. Alright, and then I'm going to select tower 1 and tower 2, and hit Control D again, and move them on over. And like I said, you guys can spend a whole lot more time modeling a really fun castle this week. Alright, that looks pretty good. Okay, so I'm pretty pleased with the way this castle looks. I could add so much more to this to make it look better, but for the sake of the demo, we'll just move on. And what I want to do is I want this to be an entire thing. So we already grouped these towers to be a whole thing, but I want to group all 4 towers and the base. So what I'll do is I will select my base, hold down Shift, and select all 4 of my towers in my outliner. Again, if you don't have your outliner open, I suggest you do have it open, and to get it open, you go to Windows Outliner. So I'll reselect these, and this time I'm going to go to Edit Group to group these, and we'll double click and name this our main castle group, and this is going to be our group here. Allows us to move our castle as one. There we go. Okay, so let's save our scene here for a second, because you always want to save. And let's just say, for the sake of argument, that I'm done with my castle and I'm ready to bring in my landscape. So bring your landscape in to Maya using an image plane, and that's pretty simple. First thing we need to do before we do that is we need to create a camera. So let's go to Create, Cameras, Camera. And we've made camera 1, and it's in the center of our scene here. And I'm going to scale it up, so I'll hit R, bring my scale tool. That looks pretty good. And let's hop into that camera. Let's go to Panels, Perspective, Camera 1. And when I'm inside Camera 1, I can see I am, I'm going to put on my View Gate, which is right here, my Resolution Gate. Left click on that, and that's going to bring up this nice gray frame, which is also going to visually tell me where I am. And I'm inside Camera 1. Alright, so now what I'll do is I want to just kind of, inside Camera 1, just kind of position my castle so I'm looking directly at it. This is just going to make things easier for us later. Okay, so I've got my camera, it's in front of my castle, things are looking good. What I want to do now is I want to add an image plane to this camera. And to do that, we go up to View in our viewport here. And we'll go to Image Plane down towards the bottom, and we'll say Import Image. And we're looking for that landscape image, which actually mine is in here. So we're going to open this image here. And it should come up perfectly, and it does. You may have to finagle with some of these settings here. I know in one of my sections we ran into some image plane settings. If you do run into that, send me an email with what's happening, and hopefully we can figure it out. But I'm sure that whatever happened inside of class was a fluke, and if it happens again, we can both do some investigative work to figure out what's going on. But for me, this happened nice and quickly. Now, if yours does not happen as quickly or nicely, or you don't see your castle, it could be that your image plane is just in front of it. So let's take a look. So let's go to our perspective camera, and we can see that this image plane is tied to the camera. So if I am moving the camera, you can see it moves the image plane with it. Alright, So I don't really want to move this camera. That's nice. I'm ready to jump back to my camera 1 and take a render. Alright, so this is looking nice, but I do notice that my image is 960 by 540, and we don't really want that. We want a full 1080, full HD image, so we need to change our render settings a little bit. And you can do that by hitting this button. Looks like it has a little gear on it, display render settings, or of course you can go to Window, Rendering Editors, and Render Settings. Alright, so I want to be render using the Hardware 2.0 renderer. It's just a nice simple renderer for us, especially in our first foray into Maya this term. But I'm still interested in the Common tab here. Now I'm gonna find what I'm looking for at the bottom. We've got this Image Size tab, and we're looking for HD 1080, not HD 540. HD 1080. There we go. And we'll hit Close. We're done. And now this says 1920 by 1080, so that's good. And now I'm going to take my main castle group, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to just move it. So let's go to my channel box here. We're going to translate this way. I'm going to rotate it a little bit, and maybe I'll translate it in X a little. I'm just moving it using my middle mouse drag method. Ooh, too far. Pretty good. I might need to scale it a bit. Use the R key to bring up my scale tool. We'll scale it down. That looks pretty good. And you know what? I think I like that. That's looking nice. Looks like it's nice on this hill, and I'll be able to draw in my shadow. Things like that. Alright, so let's take a little test render. So let's go to our render the current frame button, which is this one. And that looks good. That looks pretty good. But, you know, I don't really see my door. It looks like I need some lighting. So let's grab a light. We're going to get our directional light in. So let's go to Create Lights, and I'm going to use a directional light. And I'm going to be sure to scale it up. And I don't see any lighting going on. That's because I'm not previewing it inside of my viewport here. So to turn on the previewing, we're going to turn on this little light bulb here at the top of my viewport, which is good. You can see it affecting my castle. And I'm also going to turn on shadows. Very good. I'll turn off my wireframe for this aspect of it. Nice. So now I can see some shadows on my castle. Of course, I don't see any shadows on my image plane because this is just an illusion. Ooh, see? But that's okay. Let's go to Perspective and Camera 1. Get back here. And I'll make sure my lighting's back on. Oh, it looks like police are here. And I'm just going to rotate this until I get something that I like. And for the sake of this demo, that looks pretty good. Okay, so I've got my lighting in there, I've got my image plane, I've got my castle where it looks like it's going to be in perspective, and now I'll take a render. Alright, that looks pretty good. But I don't want this background in here. Remember, the goal is to use Maya to look at our castle in a nice perspective. We don't actually want the background in there because we want to be able to add a layer between the castle and the background in Photoshop. So what we need to do is we need to actually edit some settings in the image plane itself. So again, we're just going to save right here. Always be saving, always be saving. And to get to your attributes of the attributes of your image plane, you can try and select it and go to your attribute editor over here. And here it is. Or you can go to View, Image Plane Attributes, and this is our image plane right here. And what we're looking for is something all the way towards the bottom, and we're looking at the object display. And there's a little checkbox called Visibility, which we're going to just uncheck. Boom. It's hidden. It's just hidden. It's not deleted. It's just hidden. It doesn't have any visibility. All right, so we've hidden our background image. So now let's take another render. Very good. We have gotten rid of our background. All right, so now what I can do is I can save this image out of Maya and bring it into Photoshop. So at the top of my render view, I'm going to go to File, Save Image. I'm going to be sure to save my color managed image because we don't want to save the raw image. And I'm going to save it as a PNG, which we know has an alpha channel. And it's going to go into an image folder that Maya is going to create for us. And we'll call this my castle image VO1, and I'll hit save. And let's quit. Ooh, looks like my workspace got messed up. No problem. Let's pull this out. All right, so that got a little messed up, but we're good. Let's take a look at that render. In my castle project, in my new images folder, and there it is. Nice. So now I can use this in Photoshop. So for now, I'm actually done with Maya. So let's hit save scene. Actually, before I quit, I'm going to turn the visibility back on in my image plane, just in case I was to ever open this file again. I'd want to be sure that I knew I had an image plane in here. All right, so I'll hit File and Save Scene, and I'll hit the X because we're done. Okay, so now what I'm ready to do is I'm ready to put our landscape image underneath our new castle image. So I'm going to go into here, find my landscape, right click on it, and say Open with Photoshop. And we'll wait for this to load up for a minute. My dog's gonna bark. All right, so it's gonna load this on up. I'm done with these castle images. All right, so now I'm inside of Photoshop and we've got my background image. I'll just unlock this layer, and the first thing I'm going to do is go to File and File and Place Embedded, and we're going to look for our image that we just created inside of Maya. It's my castle project. Here it is, so I'll hit Place. And look at that. It's perfect. It's perfectly lined up already. I'll hit Enter, and that looks beautiful. And the purpose of this, guys, is now we've got our castle looking like it's nice and in perspective. And this is where the fun part of the homework begins. You can do anything you want to this image now. You guys all have excellent Photoshop skills that you've been honing over these past couple weeks. So I encourage you to take this base here and do whatever you want. I mean, we can stamp tool some bricks onto this, so we can at least put a shadow in between here. I can add a layer and double click to name it shadow, and I'll put it underneath my castle. And I'm going to use my black brush here, and we can just do this and paint a little shadow here if you want, something like that. We can blur it. And we can set it to multiply or something like that. Lower the opacity. You know, you name it. You can grab an image of a bridge, and we could add a bridge that's you know, running from here to here. You get the idea. It could be a rickety rope bridge. So there's like a rickety rope bridge that's maybe there. Maybe you have some army people or something. We could paint some smoke. Or you can get an image of smoke here. We can check this out. We can go to this new layer here. We can name it clouds, and we can add a new filter to this. We can render some clouds. Ooh, nice and green. We'll go with it. We'll go with it, and we'll make a mask on here, And I'm just going to raise my brush size and make it really soft. And I will paint away at this. Nice, just kind of creating a mask up top here. And I'll set this to multiply and kind of get like this oozy mist that's going on. All right. You know, we could paint some overlay. We could create some sort of photo filter. I think this is the photo filter one. An adjustment layer and totally change this filter. Be something like that. I like that one. That looks pretty good. And continue to Photoshop this until it looks almost unrecognizable. So again, let's just take a look at those steps. We found a landscape image. We found some images of castles. We went into Maya, we modeled our castle. Then we brought our landscape image that we found in step 1 into Maya using an image plane. Then I rendered out a PNG of my castle in perspective with my landscape, right? So I brought it in and I positioned my castle. I took a render. After I made sure that my lights were looking good and my castle was looking good, I turned off the visibility of my image plane in the display settings. And then I finally was able to have fun and bring that render into Photoshop over top my landscape and paint something pretty neat. Okay, so hopefully you guys are successful this week and have some fun making your own fantasy castles. If you do have more questions throughout the week or what's left of the week, shoot me an email. But I'm really looking forward to looking at your castles. All right, see you later.